melee power. Now, if you want to use Web Wrecking Ball for AoE, you'll have to apply Web Spray first, because Web Wrecking Ball, they consider it a. Or I'll touch on that later, but it doesn't apply webbed. But for Spider to the Fly, it's really not worth investing more than 1 point, and I know a lot of people do, and critical rating and brutal strike rating sounds really appealing, but when you look at the difference between one point in it and 20 points in it, it's let's see, I got it written down somewhere. It's 194 crit brute rating difference. So for 19 points, you're only getting 194 crit rating and brute rating, and that equals out to 9.05% crit. And on a boss, that 9.05% crit gets reduced to 5.43% crit. So you're looking for 19 points, you're only getting 5.43% crit, and then even less brutal strike, because what happens with suppression and brutal is the critical strike gets reduced, which means your brutal strike gets reduced. And then in addition, suppression also reduces the brutal strike. So your brutal strike's getting hit twice when it comes to suppression. So it's not worth the points invested into it, but it is definitely a must-have for a 1 point, just a 1 point ability.
I don't know if anyone is aware of that. I know I wasn't aware of that at all times. Is that the brutal strike rating is a percentage of your crit strike. So to it become viable, you need a crazy amount of crit rating and then a crazy amount of brutal strike rating to even make it feel worth it. And currently, a lot of people think that brutal strike rating is just either too low of a value, or it just gets overlooked at the moment because it's just not in pure DPS. It's just not worth it at the moment.
Yeah, it's great for large numbers. If you really like to see those big numbers, go for it. If you want to see those, go for as much brute as you can, and then go for Mason Uppercut. You'll get upwards of 100,000. But when it comes to your pure damage per second, it's not going to win out.
Yeah. That said, we're currently in 1.42. This game can change every week significantly. So everything we say now could be entirely different next week. So it's something to note. Let's go on to a signature move. And I want to know also, what do you think of this as a signature move? And what do you think of it?
Amazing Smash. If it looks familiar, it's because it used to be our ultimate power, except they added something to it. They added a neat, a little kind of goes out, grabs all targets, pulls them towards you, and then spins a web ball and then slams it down on them, and it immobilizes them. It actually stuns them. It says it immobilizes them, but it stuns them. They can't attack you, and it does a big chunk of damage. They increased the damage coefficient on it by 4,000. It used to be like 0.05, so you actually do gain some benefit from plus damage. Like mine, I have mine at rank 11. I just have 1 point in it, and I'll tell you why. But at rank 11, it does 24,000 to 29,000. I have my ultimate at rank 6, so it gains a synergy to it. It used to gain 5% damage per point in maximum slider, but they lowered it to 1. I don't know why they did that. I think they did it because other heroes have that same synergy. But when you look at one-off, or you look at those other big attacking abilities, this damage, it just doesn't compare. It's got a minute cooldown, and it does top end 30,000 damage. So that's not a lot at all when it comes to DPS. Really, if you're putting points into this, you have to realize you're not doing it for the damage. You're only doing it for the increased, for the 100% dodge chance to be longer than 5 seconds or whatever it is at rank 1.
If you talk about the dodge, if you talk about suppression, does it mean that on a boss you're not getting 100% dodge, but like lower?
No. So this ability is immune to suppression. This dodge chance is immune, and it was the same like when it was an ultimate. It bypassed it as well. But yeah, they kept it the same, so it is immune. But yeah, I mean, really, the difference between one rank in it and 20 ranks in it is approximately 10,000 damage. 10,000 damage over a minute cooldown is just not worth 19 points. Put 1 point in it, and I think with all the plus gear I have and the Iron Spider chest, I got it to rank 11. So I have plus 10 to my Crime Fighter tree. So you're gonna get it. You're gonna get a good bit of it. My dodge duration on it is 7.5 seconds. With some power duration gear, you can look at 8 to 9 seconds of 100% dodge. That's still great for 1 point.
Yeah. All right, and then Wrecking Ball.
Web Wrecking Ball. A lot of people don't like this ability. They said it looks really funny. It doesn't seem like Spider-Man. I mean, it may not, but it's awesome. This is a really good AoE ability. This is the best one for melee, and then I would say Stick Around is still probably the best for ranged. But this and Stick Around are the two strongest AoE options he has. It's a melee ability, so it gains the 50% damage bonus from Spider to the Fly if you web them first. It's a movement ability, so you can get Spirit back, you can get life back from Electra, and then it's a fighting, of course, so you'll get the percent bonus from those stats. The way it was for the longest time on the test center, it was labeled as a web power, and I was basically like, it should apply corrosive and web defect
Yeah,
if
I
it's a
had the
web
same.
power,
Yeah.
which would have been pretty strong because you could just spin, it'll apply it, you'll get the 50% bonus, and you'll just have to press one button, which could be a
Yes.
little too much. So now you have to press two buttons, and it's a little more difficult to put it up. But even that being said, it still does a really good bit of damage. At rank 30, mine is doing 55, 52 twice per second. And then when I add the 50% bonus from melee, I'm getting anywhere from 10 to 13,000 twice a second.
All right.
So that's pretty good. I mean, you're hitting 20,000 DPS AoE all around you.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
And then Spidey Pummel. Spidey Pummel is your go-to basic. It deals at rank 30, 51.2% extra damage to bosses, elites, and champions. It's got a good attack speed. It's just a really hard hitter. The way I'll go ahead and touch on this. The way that these percentages work, like if you look, you gain 50% from Spidey Pummel, 50% from Spider to the Fly. They aren't added at the end, if that makes sense. Like when you look at your stat tree, like your strength and fighting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It has like mine's. I have Unearthly. I don't know if you have the unique helm, but
No.
but it'll bring you up to Unearthly, and it'll give you 25% physical damage and 25% fighting power. So what that does is you take those two 25%, and they're calculated at the same time as the Spidey Pummel and as the Spider to the Fly. So you actually add them. They're not multiplicative. You take the 50% from Spider to the Fly, whatever you have from Spidey Pummel, and the 50% from Strength and Fighting, and you add it together. So you end up coming with basically, I think it's like I'm getting 155% increase. So then you take your base damage, and you multiply it, your average base damage, and you multiply it by 2.55, because it's the 1 is your original 100% damage, and then the 1.55 is your increase, and that gives you your new damage.
Is that the damage in the tooltip as well?
That the stat damage in the tooltip. So yeah, see how yours is 31.3. You take that
Yeah.
31.3, and then the 50% from Spider to the Fly, and then whatever percent modifiers you have from Strength and Fighting.
Yeah.
You add all those percents together, and then that's all those percents multiplied by your base average damage. So that's how it comes up with the new numbers. Because if you look at your when you're attacking,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you apply like a web power, it doesn't increase just 50%. It actually looks like it increases less. It looks like it increases about 36 to 40,
All right.
and that's
Yeah.
because it's additive and it's not after the fact.
All right. Yeah, makes sense.
And that kind of brings us into our next power, which is Web Spray. So Web Spray is a little different. Like it's a percent modifier, but it's not like the other ones. It's vulnerability percent, and it's a debuff on the mob, which means that it applies the percent increase on the mob side of it, not on your side of it. So it doesn't add to your other ones like the other ones do.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is it takes the damage that you're putting out and just multiplying it straight, so it's multiplicative. What that does is all those increases you have, that 50% from Spider to the Fly, the Spidey Pummel, the stats, it in addition multiplies those by the 50%. So you're gaining. So I have 50% web spray vulnerability. So Spider to the Fly, and basically instead of giving 50% damage to webbed, it's actually giving 75% damage to webbed.
All right.
So that's why web spray is the number one, and really really any class that has those percent vulnerabilities, that is a must. You have to max that.
Mhm.
It all the procs, like if you're running Mandarins or if you're running Faultine or if you're running any ability that causes damage on a target, it multiplies that damage as well.
All right. Yeah.
So it's a must. And I would say web spray with either Spider-Man's build, that's the stuff you want +2, like plus skill. If you want it on your boots, you want plus web spray, or plus web spray on gloves, or not gloves, like helm if you don't have a unique helm.
Yeah. All right. Currently the tooltip is that bugged, right? I assume.
Yes, it's so right now it's not giving any. They
All
tried
right.
to fix it. It was so since the Spider-Man rework, we haven't got a completely bug-free
Spider-Man yet?
experience
No.
yet. Yeah, and they're working on that with the new test center. It was last patch. It was applying, but it wasn't staying on for more than the first 10 seconds of the fight.
Yeah.
So you only had it for 10 seconds, and then if the fight lasted longer, you couldn't reapply it. But now it's not doing. They fixed the part where they labeled it correctly, like it was labeled as a different type of power, so that's why it wasn't working. Well, now it's labeled correctly, but for some reason the vulnerability fell off.
All right.
But on the test center, it is working, and I've confirmed it, and so it's 100% bug free on the test center unless something happens when it transitions to live.
All right. Yeah. Cool. So you can have a bug-free experience on Spider-Man on the test server right now, right? That's what you're saying.
except for web zip and spider sense right now, but web spray definitely.
All right. Yeah. If by all means just go on the web slinger tree, and the chat can
Okay.
ask me questions. I try to keep up with the chat always. So.
Okay. Web shot. Both of his ranged powers are just they're kind of not worth using. They're low on damage. They're low on attack speed. I mean, PvP wise, that chance to immobilize 50% is pretty big and maybe kind of worth it depending on how tenacity works.
Mhm.
But when it comes to DPS on the PvE side, it's just they're not worth it. You're better off just using Web Barrage and running Mots, and by doing that, then you pretty much have unlimited spirit, and then you don't even need a basic. So like that's one of the first builds I put out, is called the basicless barrage build.
Yeah.
And it doesn't run any basics and just runs web barrage. But right now, yeah, the basics aren't worth using. Stick around. That's a pretty good option for an AoE ability. It does all its damage up front now. It used to split it in two. You had to immobilize on the first, and then it stunned on the second, and you'd get the bonus damage. But
Yeah.
now it just does it all up front and immobilizes. But again, it's a stun. It's not an immobilize tooltip bug. It's got its attack speed's affected by plus attack speed, so you get some gear and it'll actually ink, which is nice. But yeah, that's a good one. It's a wide cone. I don't have it, so I can't demonstrate it.
No, me neither.
But yeah,
I can put 1 point.
but yeah, that's definitely an option. That's an option. I'll touch on web barrage last. Evasive web sling. Evasive web sling is all right. It's better than it was. It didn't used to do any damage before. It just used to immobilize. It pretty much it jumps back, or jumps up and backwards and shoots a web slot on the ground and it immobilizes for 2 seconds. It does a fair amount of damage. I don't like those abilities. It makes a gap between you and the mob you're trying to attack, so you can only really use the ability once, maybe twice. Again, that could be a PvP ability that could
to get
have
away
potential.
maybe, but
yeah, but right now in PvE, it's not worth using. And a lot of these abilities could be great in PvE or PvP, and I mean we'll see that once it's released. But for right now, it's not worth it.
All right.
Corrosive web fluid. It's basically the spider to the fly for the range class. They added web powers deal up to X% more damage to faraway targets. I want to say at like rank 20, it gets up to like 50%. I think it can go pretty high if you get plus skill to it. But remember that like plus skill to corrosive may seem appealing, but still plus web spray is going to win out just because it's on the mob side of the damage, whereas the corrosive is on your side. But on a range build, you can definitely max that out, and the dot can get up to like I think 1200 to 1400 per second, or twice per second. So you're looking at anywhere from 2000 to 3000 DPS. It's if you're melee, it's a good 1 point. If you're range, I would sure go for it. Just remember that it's pretty situational. If you're solo, solo, you're only going to get that max damage when you're far away. The closer you get, the more or the less it's going to do. So just kind of